Hello, welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. Tonight we are speaking with Philippa Beardsley and E.J. O'Hara in conjunction with their two-person exhibition, Depths of Mind and Memory, on view now through January 28th. So hello, Philippa and E.J.
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks for being here tonight. Let me spotlight Tina's video. So maybe EJ, I'll call on you first to maybe talk a little bit about yourself and your work, this body of work.
Yeah. These are a lot of works on paper that I've been making. I don't know, I've been working a lot on images of plant like images and kind of trying to use overlapping imagery to make something that surprises myself or takes me away from a kind of intentionality that I feel like I have if I'm making an image that I feel like is kind of just a singular image. And I don't know, I like to use I try to like have things look like superimpositions or feel like it's an image on top of an image. Or
And do you feel that's partly to do with your printmaking background?
I think it's like mostly to do with that, actually. I I've been kind of I've always been obsessed by printmaking and how it affects the way that images are made, and what, like, the knowledge of those kinds of techniques, how it gets itself into the imagery before the image even exists. And then lately I've also been, printing, like, not just my own images, printing other people's images. And I thought for some reason that doing that would not influence the way that I make images, but I feel like it kind of has even more. Even just, there are certain byproducts that happen in printing, like you'll have a sheet of paper that was a reject from an old edition, and then you use it to print, to come up on, or when you start printing, or to blot off on when you need to strip ink. And it's, two images that could be two totally different artists with totally different logics end up on the same sheet of paper, and you kind of just stop and look at it. And that kind of really, that feeling stuck with me. And I try to put that feeling into the works that I make because I find it surprising, and I find it to have like a sensibility and a logic that I couldn't possibly get any other way. And I try to like approximate that, even though I feel like it's impossible. I like to try to like superimpose something without looking at what's underneath, or to have some way of kind of like maybe paint an element in the dark or something so you can't really see it. And like you turn lights on and you see it, and it's, whoa, I didn't think it would look like that, but I like it.
And in your statement, you mentioned interest in plant, the history of plant symbolism.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't know if that's the right wording, because I'm interested I'm interested in reading about that stuff, but I also kind of just choose something that I feel like has some significance. I don't necessarily put it in because I want the work to be about that particular thing. But for a long time, I've been obsessed by this book about the plant, like the mythological and astrological significance of all of the plants in Botticelli's Primavera. And a lot of these images come from the Primavera. They're like drawings of details of the Primavera. And I find it to be like really funny and I like that there's so much read into it. But then I don't know, when I use it, there's not like an allegory happening necessarily or anything like that. But I do also like, I don't know, I kind of find myself fascinated with, I don't, I don't want to freak anyone out, but I got really obsessed with the Paul is Dead conspiracy, which is about the Beatles. And a lot of people in the 60s believed that Paul McCartney died and that a replacement was, a lookalike was used to replace him to continue the Beatles. And they thought there were all these messages in the album covers and in the albums themselves. And a lot of the clues that people found were plants. Like there's a burial mound on the bottom of Sergeant Pepper's, and people are like, that's the burial mound, it's a clue, and it has hyacinths on it. And then there's like this part in the movie Magical Mystery Tour where there's all the Beatles are wearing carnations, but Paul's is black, and that's a clue that he died, which I don't believe he died. I'm not, I think, but I
The
like that. I like that stuff, and I also happen to choose most of the plants that I choose to draw kind of have overlap between Renaissance plant lore and maybe Beatles conspiracy plant lore.
I mean, if there is a duplicate Paul, he's had a very long career.
He's the better musician as well.
So maybe Philippa, since we're at a couple of your pieces here, and get you to speak about where you're coming from. So you use box forms for your pieces primarily, yes?
Yes, yeah. Deconstructed cigar boxes, and then I cut out wood and mount that on top in relationship to the box. And I go from there. And it's stuff that I'm into. And that was an experiment, this one, and that's why I called it that. It was the first piece I did where I put spackle on top and carved into it. So
what attracts you to the box form?
I got into it when, well, I started to enjoy working on wood, but I didn't have a way to make panels. So then I started to get cigar boxes, and then I fell in love with them. And then how many different things you can do with them, and taking them apart, and then cutting out wood, and it's it's not a frame, it's an outside frame. So that's what I was doing. And that's what I'm into. But I also like to make my own wood panels. And then I also decided to buy some wood panels because I was getting frustrated with my not 90-degree angles, and I couldn't even really have fun with them. And I had to mess them up in order to paint on them. I don't know. It's just, I guess you get used to what you paint on.
And your imagery, in your statement, you mentioned walking through your neighborhood. So
Yeah, yeah.
things catch your eye or
Yeah, yeah. I love to walk through the neighborhood and just look at things. Look at buildings in particular. I love living in the city and looking at buildings and stuff and people, and then looking into windows. I'm not looking into windows to be, weird or anything, but just to see different shapes that you wouldn't even recognize as maybe a human or a plant, or maybe you would recognize it as all of those things. So that type of thing. It's a mixture of memory and things that I'm very into at the moment. And then, of course, whatever shape I'm making onto the panel.
And do you work on them directly, or do you like draw and then, or, you know, work them out ahead of time, or is it more direct on the bottom?
Oh yeah, it has to be direct, or else it's just not fun for me. I can't really plan it out ahead of time. It has to be direct, and then I like to kind of feed whatever's, you know, I want to go into the studio and just work, but then I sometimes try to control that a little bit by doing, I don't know, drawings of stuff that I'm into, but then it never really seems to work. It works better if I just watch films or walk around or look at other people's paintings or go to the museum or hang out with my cats. I don't know.
And are you're working on like multiple at the same time, right? Like
Yes, oh yeah, multiple at the same time. That's how I like to work. I like them to work in relationship to each other and then possibly work alone as well.
And then EJ, what about your preparatory process?
I prepare in that I'll have sources that I like to repeat. Like a lot of I think that one is almost identical to another one that's in color that's close by. But then I like to, I guess I usually start something and then like rest and then figure out what needs to be done to it to make it feel like a different idea or a complete idea. And it sometimes takes a long time. Like I'll do something to a piece that I've started, and then it'll sit in a drawer for like 6 months, and then I'll pull it out and see it and realize I know exactly what I want to do with that now. But I kind of have like, you know, a few ideas bubbling at the same time that I try to like see if they work together, and sometimes they do. And you know, I don't know if that answers the question.
I'm just curious. So some of them, you work on them over a period of time. Yes, like on and off.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do the same thing, Philippa, or are they like, do you start to finish, or do you put them aside and look at them?
Yeah, I do a similar thing. I do. I usually have, there's things that I'm not sure they're done, and then there's things that I think are done, and then I change my mind. So I don't really, yeah, it's similar in that way where things are never really complete for me, if that is, or maybe they are complete, but I sometimes think they're complete and then they're not. So that's why I need to get rid of them out of my house.
Yes, it's handy to have a show to do that.
Yeah.
Somewhere like a way station for a while.
Mhm.
So is this one we're looking at here, is this a spackle piece?
No, that is plaster of Paris.
Plastic, yes, because it gives it a very sculptural quality. Almost like a curtain effect.
Yeah. That is one of my first and last experiments with that medium, only because of the dust, and it also warps the wood so quickly.
Ah,
But I do like that about it too. I like the texture and what it did for me there. I like that. But I don't think I'll be experimenting with that again.
So where did the interest in materials come from? Like, because you're straddling like painting and sculpture.
I keep some of my paintings seem to happen too quickly, and then they're on this 3D surface, and it doesn't seem like enough to me. You know, it's like, well, why isn't this on paper? So I thought, okay, I need to make it more material. So experimenting with plaster of Paris and changed my mind about that, and then went to spackle. I enjoyed that. Yeah.
And some of your work has like figurative elements, like this one.
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
So this one's called Blue Goodbye.
Hmm.
Do the titles come like up front or after, or does it emerge during?
Sometimes I get a title right away, and other times I do not. And then this is a painting where the title has changed many times, but it's about the same thing. I just don't really have a good title for it. I don't know if I like that title, but it's pretty much the same thing.
So both of you went to the Pennsylvania Academy, but different programs. Like E.J, you went through certificate, and Philippa, the MFA.
Mhm.
Yeah, can you speak a little bit about your experiences there and how that affected what you're doing today?
Who wants to go first?
Mm.
I guess you.
Me. I loved the academy. I thought it was great. I think I was there at a great time. It was a really vibrant community. The students that I in my class and in the years around me had so much seriousness and joy in what they were doing, and the faculty as well. And there was like a great camaraderie. And I think the main thing that I'm realizing right now is that even though that was the case, I think that a lot of what I've done and what I did while I was there was kind of in opposition to the ethos of the academy at the time, which was really like painting centric. And um, I studied printmaking, and I felt like kind of um, like you know a little bit outside because of that. Not that I really was, like, I don't think anybody treated me badly because of that, but it was like more of an ideology of painting there. And I am realizing that right now in my studio is like the first time I'm allowing myself to like work with oil paint on rigid supports. And I think it's taken me like, 12 years to kind of allow myself to experiment with that. But I think that's my issue, not the academy necessarily.
But there you learned all the printmaking processes, right? Or did you
Yeah, yeah, I did. No, yeah, but it felt like very much like at the same time as it was like the time where you declared a major and then you got your studio, like I felt like as much as I was going into my um what I really wanted to focus on, I also felt like I don't know, it was separating me from like the the school at large in some way. I think I did a good job of like getting people into lithography, especially. Ron Weifels, who's the lithography teacher, was at the opening, and he reminded me that I was kind of campaigning to be a lithography major, which would have been ridiculous because
right?
being a
Kind
making
of
major.
school. Mhm.
Yeah, but I thought apparently, and I didn't really remember this until he reminded me, I felt pretty strongly that like it should be its own major and it was separate. But
Yeah, he has a vested interest.
yeah, I'm sure he loved that I was saying that stuff out loud. But
So the two of you overlapped, but you didn't meet there.
I don't think so.
Mm.
So Philippa, so knowing from my own experience in MFA, which it's like a private studio critique based, do you feel it helped form your artistic outlook?
Yes, I do. I enjoyed writing a thesis, even though I don't really, it's not something I usually enjoy to do, is to write, but I found that to be very helpful. And
So were you painting while you were there?
yes. Yep. Yeah.
Was it straight painting or was it like using box forms at that time? Or did that come later?
No, I started to work on, well, that was also something very helpful, was working on wood. I got away from canvas, which I think was always something about canvas and also oil paints. I could never feel comfortable with it. It felt too serious to me. So I went from using watercolors to acrylic and then getting really into that and then working on wood and making panels. And then, so that, yeah, that was very, very helpful as well, sort of figuring that out.
So I'm interested to know from the two of you, I mean, seeing your work juxtaposed with another artist, what that experience is like. Like, what are your thoughts on the show?
I love it. I think that the work looks really, really amazing together. And I think seeing Philippa's work next to mine makes me appreciate a little bit more about what I've done. And also, I mean, her work is so beautiful and amazing. And I just think that the way it goes together is really, really good. And you guys did a great job hanging the show.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it went together really, really smoothly. I mean, it's interesting the affinities between the work.
Yeah. I love all the flowers in your work, EJ. I love them. And I've been so into flowers the past couple of years. It's all I think about. And then that's your paintings. I love them. Or your paintings and prints. And then the way that you do these lines, like that red line coming through. I like that a whole lot. And I don't think we do the same thing, but there is something that we're doing that is very much, there's a good connection.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, I feel like your work has a lot of kinship with artists that think about their dreaming lives. And I know that you talk about memory, but I wonder if you'd feel like your work has anything to do with the dreaming.
Oh yeah. Yep. It certainly does. I can't, it's not something I do intentionally, but it's something that I think of, I record my dreams. So it's not strange to me that that would end up in my painting. I think of my painting as being probably memory, dreaming, and then, whatever I'm experiencing at that moment. Just a giant collage, pretty much.
Yeah,
Or something I want it to be. I want it to be more like that.
I think it is.
Yeah.
That's, I think, something that I'm so drawn to about it is that it's feels like a fantasy in the way that dreaming does. And it has like a beautiful kind of like I want to say uh it has a dreamlike atmosphere, I think often your works do. And I just think that that's really some, something that I latch on to about them.
Hmm.
I think that like I've thought of, I think that I've often like thought of, or people have told me that my work is psychological, but I feel like they don't mean what I think of when I think of that word. And I feel like dreaming has more to do with like, you know, being psychological than most stuff does. And I think you have that on lock.
Hmm.
I think that that's something that works about this show is that your work feels like very dreamlike, and I think mine is like psychological in a different way.
Hmm. Yes, yeah. I like seeing the layers in your work. I'm enjoying that. And it's like the something I'm enjoying right now as I'm looking at this painting is the orange. It just seems like a tear into, but also it doesn't seem violent to me. It seems there's just something, I don't know. I wouldn't really call it dreamlike just because of how I think of that, but I would maybe some other type of memory
Yeah,
forming. Yeah.
I I think that the instinct for that is I'm kind of obsessed with like looking at old frescoes that have cracks in them,
Yeah.
and
Oh
and
yeah,
I'm
I love that.
always like more interested in the cracks than,
Mm.
well, not more, but I'm equally as interested in the cracks.
Yeah.
And I always think about making a painting that's like, oh, what would that crack be like? Or like, what would it
Mm.
be like to have a painting that just starts with the cracks already there? And that's what that form kind of is. But it does have something to do with that kind of like inability to remember a certain part of a dream, but having it still be there in the recollection as like a different thing, even though you can't put it together in a linear way.
Hmm. Oh yeah. I that makes sense to me. And I also something I'm attracted or was recently attracted to was this garden fence or piece of a garden fence that I got for my garden. And it was very deteriorated, and this guy was selling it maybe $5 or $10, but to me it was just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen because it's bent out of shape, and then it's these things that look like hands, but they're not really the original shape because of rain, probably. And I love that so much. I prefer that more than something that is considered whole, but it's just this thing of memory, and maybe what some people would think is a deterioration or not perfect, but it's more of a layers.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. And I love that about old buildings and old paintings, books, anything.
yeah, yeah. I'm really into how the now that you're saying that, I mean, I was really attracted to the shapes of the supports that you use, but it kind of makes a lot of sense now because you feel like it feels like you're working into an object that already has like a character of its own, and then you kind of like meet it on its terms with the paint. And I just think that's really nice. And it does like add like to the character and charm of the object itself, like that it's like not just a straight square, like it's something that you found and saw the beauty in and then did it. It's really nice.
I mean, I
Thank you.
think it's interesting that Philippa's work projects into the viewer's space, like physically. But then EJ, in your visual field, you've got like obstructions in front of the viewer, like the tears and the different layers. So if like someone's trying to see the bottommost image, there's something in front of them, so it it interferes with the visual field, so you can't negotiate it as a singular entity. You're forced to reconcile these other elements.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah, and spending time with the show day by day, I get to look more and sort of those things emerge. I mean, do you feel that way, that you're like purposefully interfering with the viewers?
100%, yeah. I don't think that this work is like really striving to do that, but I've always kind of been obsessed by the idea of a moire pattern, which is when, like, if you've ever tried to photograph a television screen, you know what it is, but it's an interference pattern.
Uh-huh.
It's when one grid or kind of grid type system is superimposed over another grid type system, and they're not exactly lining up and they're not the same size, they create a third tertiary pattern. I feel like there is a spirit of like when I put something on to obstruct, it's not necessarily a destructive act. I want to create that tertiary thing. And sometimes it doesn't happen, but sometimes something happens and there is like a third.
Right, something new is
Yeah.
created. So Philippa, how do you feel like about the thought of your work like projecting towards the viewer? Like it's sort of like what is your conception of like the viewer and your work?
So that is why I want to get more physical with my materials, because of that part, and because I also was not feeling that good when it's like, okay, well, what's the point? So why don't I just do stuff flat? So then I was trying to do that and it's like, okay, it doesn't feel good. So it's like, okay, so now I have to make this work for me and also, I guess, for the viewer. Well, of course, not really for the viewer. I think it's always for myself first. But yeah, that is something I think about and consider.
I mean, it's interesting, since they're small scale, they pull the viewer in so that you have to physically get close to, and then you could almost hold them in your hands, especially
Yeah.
if it's a box form, because it's something it would feel appropriate to put your hands on a box and open it, or so it's
That is something I've been thinking about recently, is where and I like what's happening on the sides of them, but I don't really want to make it. I just want it to be, I think I want it to be something someone can pick up and put in their hands and move around. But I also really just love painting and I kind of want to stick to that, so I don't know what to do.
Philippa, some of them have writing on the sides of the
Mm.
supports, right?
Yeah.
Like quite a bit of writing. And I know that you just said a few moments ago that you aren't interested in writing, but
Mhm.
I wonder what about that interests you enough to put words on the sides? And is that the title? Is it related to that, or is it more just a separate idea that's in the work?
Mm, no, it belongs to the work, but I don't always want it to be legible. And then sometimes I'll use writing as a way to try to, as an experiment, try to get it to work as lines would without, just to get away from how I usually make lines. And then sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, or yeah, I do use writing, but I don't really want it to be too readable. But it does belong with the work, but it's not supposed to be in any type of way that's readable. Although
It's not
sometimes it is.
It's not the ones that I remember on the sides are not, I couldn't make out more than a few. So I think you're doing a good job of that. But I did think it was really fascinating that it was like, I think on the tops of some of them. And it was just, it made you address the sides in a more serious way. And, some of them, the sides are painted much more than the others too, but I thought it was interesting. I wanted to ask you that.
Thank you. Thanks for noticing that too.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
It's a wonderful show. We're really happy to have it here.
Thank you.
And thank you for your thoughts tonight. And the show itself is up through January 28th. We hope people can come down and see it. And thanks again and have a great night.
Thank you. And thanks, Tina.
Yeah.
Good night, guys.